this isn't going to be a traditional review, instead I'm going to review 2 issues in one video. And this should be really fun. Now, I'm not going to talk about the story all that much, because the story in this is basically Panic in the Sky from Archie. So, if you have read Panic in the Sky, then you already know what the story in this is going to be. In fact, the structure in issue number 9 is exactly the same as 2 issues in that said arc. It has the planning stage, the break stage, and then finally the full-blown attack, and it lacks so much originality, it's just painful.
In fact, the characters also don't help, because the way the characters are written in this story is a particularly big problem. Well, let's start with the good one, Whisper, because she gets a little bit of screen time, not a whole lot, but she gets a little bit. And it doesn't hurt her character or help her character as much, but it is pretty good, I'd say. It's not the worst ever. Most of the characters in here are either bland or incredibly obnoxious because of the way they're written. And no better case is this with Amy Rose. Now, you can get my sort of full opinion, I guess, if you go back to my cringe-worthy issue number 2 review. I'm going to say that I didn't like it primarily because Amy acting like Sally and a tactician really didn't make a whole lot of sense. And she was also kind of overpowered because of that, because she was both a fighter and a tactician, and it just kind of annoyed me. Really annoyed me. Not only that, but she goes from being a radio operator to a full-blown tactician. How the hell did that happen? And again, it makes no sense here, especially because in issue number 2, they established that Knuckles was the leader of the Resistance. Yet Knuckles does none of the leading. He's back to his Sonic X days, where he's a completely idiotic brute beyond comparison. In fact, Knuckles in this issue doesn't do any leading, even though they've prefaced time and time again that he's the leader of the Resistance. But Amy does all the leading, and then there's this scene where she goes, "I don't know, you're the smart one." Like, she turns into normal Amy again for some reason. Like, that dialogue doesn't make any sense. If you're gonna make her like Sally, okay, but why make her like Amy all of a sudden? It doesn't fit at all. One thing I will say is an improvement, though, is Tangle, since this issue gave her far more character development than she did in issue number 4 when she was being introduced. They hyped her out to be this big thing, and she didn't become a character properly until issue number 9. And all she is just a mixture of Amy and Styx, so why not just have Amy act like Amy instead of Sally out of nowhere? I'm gonna bring that up again. I know people are gonna say, but Amy's not a princess. Doesn't matter. Why is she a tactician? I don't understand. And also, this issue makes it pretty blatant that Tangle wants to start cleaning Blaze's carpets, if you catch my drift. Jeez, calm down there, Tangle. You're going to Angel Island, not the island of Lesbos. And there's this scene where Tails starts turning Japanese, or goes for the 72, and that's dependent on whether or not you were born after the year 2001. And then he proceeds to crash the Starship Enterprise into Angel Island. But not before everyone quickly gets onto their extreme gear. And if you don't know what extreme gear is, it doesn't explain it. It's just something from Sonic Riders or some shit, which is a sequel to Sonic R. So if you're confused, I don't blame you. I really don't. And now we're at this big climactic battle, which had very little fanfare building up to it in the comics, and it's a poorly choreographed fight scene that mirrors not only Panic in the Sky, but also takes a lot of influences from the Battle of Endor on Star Wars. This is bad for multiple reasons. Number 2, you're reusing content, showing just how unoriginal you are. Great! And second of all, this is Lumpy, Chewbacca's son. Now, Chewbacca and Lumpy live on the planet Endor, with a bunch of 2-foot-tall Ewoks. But they are from Kashyyyk, and Wookiees are native to Kashyyyk. So here's my question. Why the hell are Wookiees hanging out with Ewoks? Does that make any sense? No. No, it does not. And now you're probably asking, what's the connection to the comic?
Yeah! Absolutely nothing!
But the choreography in this battle is just terrible. The pacing is so off. It jumps right into the battle, and then almost immediately, they go to Metal Sonic, and then he transforms. Wow. So original. I didn't see that coming. Speaking of which, Blaze does a Kamehameha. Again, something I didn't expect to come out of this. Wow. Yeah, I'm really not impressed at all. So to summarize issue number 9, it sucks. The pacing is terrible, the continuity between the issues beforehand sucks, the continuity with forces sucks.
Its choreography is bad, it doesn't explain basic concepts that are important to the storyline, and some characters just disappear for no reason, like Shadow the Hedgehog, and I have no idea why these things happen in here, but it just kinda does. Not only that, but the choreography is just terrible on so many levels.
Which only serves to make the fight scenes more confusing. In fact, it's almost like they intentionally forgot the basic setup for how you write a comic book, or even write a comic book of this magnitude, featuring something of this magnitude, basically. They didn't set it up in any proper structure of how a comic book is written. Honestly, go read something from Marvel or DC, and they don't do this shit. I'm talking about pre-SJW Marvel and DC. Not what you're gonna see now, because that's a lot like this. It's just terrible. It's terrible. And the twist was so bad. Why take something from Sonic Adventure 2 and just repackage it? I don't understand. Why? That's so lame. And overall, the comic is just bad. It has nothing to offer anybody. Maybe shills, but they're not usually going to buy these comic books. So
now we're at issue number 10, and fair warning, this is going to be much like Other M, Ian's fan comic. So that's your warning right now to either get out or continue watching out of sheer curiosity, for that matter. The issue itself starts off after the ending of the 9th issue, and then it goes immediately towards a Happy Tree Friends style fight scene where Sonic and Knuckles get beaten up a lot, and the dialogue even is reminiscent of that of Pontac and Graff's writing, which is not a good thing, because one of the things that Ian Flynn is praised for is not being Pontac and Graff, being, better than Pontac and Graff in terms of the writing department for most people. So here's my question. If you're being praised for not being like two other writers, why the hell are you trying to be like two other writers? And if you look at the dialogue, yeah, he's just trying to emulate Pontac and Graff's style, and it does not work here. You're better than this, Ian, come on.
And then we jump right back into the crappy action scenes, although at the very least, this panel right here, it at the very least shows Tangle and Whispers' abilities better than it does anyone else's. Because everyone else's, they're all just fighters, although it at least shows them using some kind of brain work, to be honest. It's better than the rest of them, but not much better. And then it goes back to being crappier than what we had before. And again, the action here isn't really worth talking about all that much, but there are a couple of lines that are worth talking about, because the action is just bad. We'll leave it at that, because pacing, again, is just terrible. But Tails gives off the line, "We need to work smarter, not harder," even though Amy is saying, "We're making headway, we're not losing, keep it up." So, why doesn't he just let them do what they're doing while he makes a distraction? I don't get this line. I really, really don't. I mean, if there's somebody you want to listen to about tactics in this comic book, it's definitely Amy motherfucking Rose.
So then we cut to Mr. Tinker yelling at Bunny Rabbit and the other children, "I am serious. Why is it that everybody in these comics is constantly yelling for no reason? Why are they yelling in the first place? They shouldn't be yelling at children who are just having fun. Or when they're sneaking around. Why are they yelling then? It doesn't make any sense. Also, this is the voice that I use to attract women to me. This is why I have a lot of marks on my face." And so, without any explanation, Diki and Kreka have gotten out of jail, and now they are going to take Eggman or Mr. Tinker back to who I'm presuming is Neo Metal, or I don't know. Like, they say the doc said you were crazy, but this line doesn't make any sense because it's so vague. Like,
I shouldn't be asking this question, because continuity isn't one of Ian Flynn's strong suits at all, so I'm not even going to answer that. Wait a minute. That's not Nadiki and Kreka at all. These two are so generic, I'm confusing them for Naruto characters. Why? And then it cuts to Tails apprehending a ship. The problem here, though, is that it shows little damage was done to the docks, even though we saw Tails crash the Enterprise into the fucking docks. And we've also seen Blaze do that with the Kamehameha, destroy the docks, etc., keep the forces from going on, and that's kind of the thing with the fight scenes here as well, especially in issue number 9 and 10. Why is it that this battle feels so much like a small scuffle, basically? That's what I'm asking. All you had to do was just draw a ton of more Mobians and a ton of more robots in the background, and it would feel a lot more epic. But here, there's so little going on, and there's so little enemies on screen that you just think, what exactly is the importance of this battle? I mean, this is the battle over one of the most powerful artifacts in this universe, and nobody is trying to stop it from getting into the wrong hands. Not only that, but you'd think the resistance after a while would, be reformed, They were reforming, they went through towns, they recruited some more people back, and it just so happens that nobody showed up for this. After everything that happened in this comic, nobody showed up at all. So this big-ass climax comic ends up just feeling very shallow. Also, while they're trying to get to the surface, Amy and Rouge mentioned Shadow, who hasn't appeared so far and for some reason disappeared at the end of issue number 9. So, what could this mean?
Of course Shadow would appear out of absolutely nowhere with very little fanfare with some Chaos Control lightsaber. This is really going Last Jedi here. That's never a good sign at all. That's not a good sign at all. In fact, let's just go full-blown Force Awakens and just completely take a concept that's already been done and do it again. But this time it has the word super in it, and there's a diamond in its crotch. Why? Because, an intelligent villain like this is totally gonna get the idea that if it didn't work the first time, it'll work the second time. Also, you might remember how I said that this has a similar problem to Other M? Yeah, that's because they had to get 2 artists on this issue.
And much like Other M, the art style's consistency suffers heavily because of it. Sure, it gets better once Stanley takes over, but that's because Tracy is a fucking hack. And honestly, I don't know why they didn't just redo the whole comic in Stanley's style, since that seems to have been a better idea. Okay, but whatever. Let's just roll with it. Why can't we just move past Other M already? Why can't we just move past that and do something fresh and original? Why do we have to keep going back to a shitty fan comic that was written back in 1998? So here's what I think of these two. They suck. They legitimately suck. Like every other issue of IDW. Except, what's even worse, there's nothing redeemable about these two in general. At least issue 7 had Whisper. What does this have? Nothing. Nothing. Both stories just retell something I've already seen. The art of issue number 10 is worse than issue number 9's because it's inconsistent. And that is a problem that, weirdly, Ian had in his comics back in the 90s. When he was working on his freaking fan comic. So why he can't move past that, I don't know. It's not even his fault. It's just... That's just a really funny coincidence. that a comic 20 years ago would have the same problems as the comic today. From a fan of all things, I don't get it. I just don't. And there just isn't any tyrant rapist Knuckles or NPC Nicoles to really break up the monotony of this shit. It's just, there's nothing interesting to talk about. Nothing. Whatsoever. I'm honestly glad I put this into 2 because I had a lot to talk about here. Because if I didn't do that, I'd have nothing to talk about. I would have nothing to talk about. These comics honestly just feel like a total waste of time and effort. There was no care put into it from any sides, and the fact that Joe Hughes isn't here just makes it even worse, because you can clearly tell that the quality of the comic has gone down drastically without him. And I can't even keep Walt Disney's body in my freezer anymore. Do you guys not realize all the hoops I had to jump through to get that freaking body, and I can't pay for it anymore? Do you realize how annoying that is? And speaking of Disney, it uses the same tactics as Force Awakens. It just goes and says, hey, remember that? Yeah, well, guess what? I don't care. Bring me something new. Do something new. You guys have done new things before. What's the excuse? Nothing. Nothing at all. But of course, you'll have idiots like Night of the Wind saying this is the best thing ever. Because it's based off of the games. Well, sure, it's based off of the games. It copies their plots down. But what does it bring that the games didn't do better? Nothing. Nothing. And speaking of people like Night of the Wind, who like to praise Flynn for being just like the games, my question is that if they don't like Pontiac and Graf, why are they praising Flynn for now doing the same fucking thing? Now, I know for certain that people like Flynn, especially because he isn't Pontiac and Graf, because they think that he is better than Pontiac and Graf. So why is he trying to become like Pontiac and Graf? I don't know. I honestly don't know. And there's no reason for that business-wise, or respect-wise either, but whatever. People are hypocrites sometimes, and that's just what we're gonna get right here. Hypocrites. Praising this comic because, oh, it's just like the games, while at the same time they're bashing Forces for having a similar writing style to the comics. Oh my god, this is so stupid. So the things I can give Flynn that I think he does well, I can't even give here because he's not doing it. He's just trying to copy down Pontiac and Graf. And what doesn't help is the editor, and you can clearly tell the editor just didn't do anything. Nothing adds up. Why is Chewbacca living on Endor? What is going on with this comic book?